Hello and welcome to the penultimate round of the 31st edition of the Reykjavik Open. Only 2 rounds left, so things starting to heat up. And we're first going to look at the standings and see what we're looking at. So we have Abhijit Gupta, the sole leader, 7 points, 7 out of 8. A very impressive tournament so far. He's been playing some fantastic chess. Number 2 and 3, we have Shaq Mamedyarov and Niels Grandelius. Mamedyarov perhaps, well, not a spectacular tournament, but he's still in second place. And then we have a large group on 6 points, and players in this group will need to most likely get a win in this round to have any chances at all, and hope that Gupta doesn't manage to win his game. Among those we have Jones, Sheparinov, Rapport, Movsesian, Merkumian, Sarkisian, our good friend Tanya Sakstiev, and then some young players there like Christian Stuvik. Bromberger has been doing well, and then Andreikin, who hasn't had a special tournament either, but he's still around. So let's see the standings.
Oh no, it's the pairings.
The pairings, excuse me. So Niels Grandelius, who we talked about creeping up for a while, he's crept up all the way to the top board.
Very impressive after his early round mishap, as it were.
Yes, he lost in the first round against a local Icelandic player, rated just over 2,000. A big upset, over 600 rating points difference. And for most people that could be a huge upset, and it could be difficult to bounce back from, but he just kept playing, and he's here now with 6.5 out of the last 7, playing with white against Gupta. Then we have a very interesting game on board number 2, Richard Rapport against Shaq Mamedyarov.
This is very interesting because very often in these large opens, the very top seeds find it very hard to play each other, since they always tend to play down from top half to bottom half in this Swiss pairing system. So for myself, it's always a pleasure that finally the top seeds get to play each other. And of course, sometimes these people have been trying to be very careful, have a draw, but they have 2 people who like unconventional openings, who are very sharp. And to be honest, they're both a little bit behind the top guys. So a amicable draw is not really in their best interest.
No, Rapport needs to win. He has the white pieces. Mamedyarov, he wants to win the tournament, so I don't think either of them is happy with the draw. Board 3 we have Sabino Brunello from Italy playing against Dmitry Andreikin. Andreikin will look to position himself nicely for the last round, maybe get a game against Gupta. Then we have another Italian, Rambaldi, he's playing Sarkisian. Sheparinov is playing Elizabeth Patz.
We should mention that we had a very nice interview with Elizabeth yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about the GM norm possibilities of her good friend Tanya Sakstiev, but we did not really mention that Elizabeth herself, after her win over Grandmaster Mikael Marin, is also performing at 2600.
Yes.
And therefore she still needs probably around 1 or 2, depending on who she gets in the last round, to achieve her second Grandmaster norm.
Yes, getting Sheparinov, who is close to 2700, should obviously help.
Yes, so she needs, I believe, to draw to keep her norm chances alive.
Yes. Then we have some interesting classes that we will look at. From Berger Merkumian, Movsesian is playing Tanya.
And we've been told that Tanya Sakstiev only needs to draw today to get a Grandmaster norm, her second Grandmaster norm. So this is a big game for her today.
Could get a 9-run norm. Jones is playing Stewie Cole, another young IM. I'm not sure about his chances, but okay, there must be some. The Brazilian Berardino is playing Grigorians, and then Beliavsky is playing against the Brown. So we're gonna jump into the top boards, and then we will look at some interesting openings that we find on the other boards. So we're going to go to board number 1.
So this is a very interesting opening, and we should immediately point out that Abhijit Gupta, a very, very well-prepared, hard-working Indian player, who told us in one of his interviews that as a professional chess player, He spends around 6 to 8 hours working on his chess when he's not at tournament, when he's at his home is India. And he's always very well theoretically prepared, and he's a Grunfeld player. And this kind of explains the move order that we see in the game in front of us. They played a notoriously famous anti-Grunfeld move order, that after knight c3, we are threatening to play e4, forcing black into a King's Indian type pawn structure where black will not be able to play d5. So the Grunfeld player here has to play d5 if he wishes. Yeah. And then there are various choices in this position, and we call this basically the anti-Grunfeld variations, where they go either queen a4 or queen b3 or pawn takes pawn. There are many different ones.
Yeah, queen b3, queen a4. This is, like you said, this is sort of the last chance to enter the Grunfeld, because if you play bishop g7, you want to keep your options open. White can go e4, and there's no longer a Grunfeld really available. So d5 as expected, and he took on d5 now. And note the difference between a normal Grunfeld is, of course, the pawn is still on d2. And it seems like, for a while I've been trying to play these anti-Grunfeld lines instead of going for some of the older main lines, if you will. g3, so g7.
To be fair, g3 is not the most aggressive of moves. There's queen a4 check, queen b3, there's the very early e4. g3 is not necessarily the most aggressive reply, although there is one possibility for mixing it up later on. Of course, Grandin is playing the Grunfeld himself, played the Grunfeld yesterday, so always interesting to see what people play against their own opening. Castles. White could castle and either transpose to normal fianchetto lines with d4 at some point, or he can try to play with structures with d3, which it looks like he might here with the pawn to h4 move. And we already have further moves, h6. White castled, and c5. So it almost looks like quite a standard position with the rather unusual moves h4 and h6 in.
With this inclusion.
And very often in this position we play moves like, we can play the immediate d4, we can play the immediate d3. There are many choices here for white, but it's quite unusual that these h4, h6 in moves have been thrown in. I should say that usually the white players who've actually played this, it's not a novelty, has been played by very creative players like Alexander Morozevich against Aronin and Manuel, and Malatkov versus Yakovenko. So h4 is not an unknown idea, but it is still an unusual idea to sort of reach, like I said, a standard position where one day maybe we play d3, and we can play some sort of idea where when you play bishop d2, we have queen c1, maybe forcing king h7. Again, it doesn't seem as though it's anything really special. I don't expect white to play for the immediate d4, because then I don't see the point of h4, h6.
Exactly.
Usually in these positions, you play d3, at some stage the knight will retreat to b6, and then you play bishop e3, and then when you play queen d2, you gain that tempo. So I don't believe white should play d4 here. But again, this is we're still, like I said, in known theory. I expect white to play d3 here, but Grandilis is thinking, and as you mentioned yourself, he is a Grunfeld player himself, so he's just trying to work out what sort of preparation, because after all, he was the one who played the system, and it can't really be a surprise to him that only a very small number of games have reached this position. And black, of course, did not have to play c5. This would have been a first branching off point. Black could have played the immediate knight c6, for example. So this was sort of one of the first choices.
Like we mentioned about the norms, apparently only Tanya can reach a 9 game norm. And there's a fun fact that Mark Asselman,
I don't think we should be the one
no,
to
that's
tell him.
true. That Mark Asselman, if he wins this game against Simon Adestein, which will be tough with the black pieces, he will have a tournament performance rating of 2,599.
Now we should say that it's not all lost for him, because we're talking about a 9 game norm.
Yeah, 9 game. And you need 2,600, so he's missing 1 point.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I mean,
No, but he could.
There are no exceptions.
Yes, yes, and but it's a 9-game norm, and the tournament is 10
it's
rounds.
10 rounds,
so he can still make up for it tomorrow.
Yeah, if he has a good result, he can probably still have his chance tomorrow.
We can,
Point number 2.
Mm-hmm. We can just very quickly, because Queen takes D5 has happened, or I assume will happen, and a very normal idea here is to play D3, and then after Knight C6 to play Bishop E3. This is an extremely well-known.
But with a pawn on, of course, H2 and H7.
Mm-hmm. So this is an extremely well-known position where White is threatening Knight D4.
This is threatened.
Yes, and this actual game, if this happens, which is very possible, would transpose to Radjabov versus Swidler from the FIDE World Cup in Tromsø in 2013. And here, apparently, if Black played the standard move, which is Bishop D7, White would get a small advantage with Queen C1, the big difference.
I remember, yes.
Because we are hitting H6 and C5.
With the Icelandic legend Fredrik Ólafsson, where he beat Jan Timman with the black pieces with Bishop D7. But yeah, you're right. In that case, the pawns were on H2 and H7. But here the difference is that you're hitting the pawns on C5 and H6.
So in this position, we can see that the standard Bishop D7 would not actually work. And the best move, as played by Peter Swidler, noted King's Indian expert, would be in fact not the standard Bishop to D7, but the move that he played against Radjabov, Queen to H5. And in this position, if Queen to C1, then Black could play a very aggressive looking Knight to D4. And this position has dynamic counter chances for both sides. In the actual game, Radjabov played Rook to C1. And Peter Swidler in this position played B6, overprotecting the B6 pawn. And the principal move here, of course, is to play D4 to try to get this bishop working on the long diagonal. And yet again, Peter Swidler, again famous for his Grunfeld work, played Rook D8. And apparently, according to analysis, Black is fine here. This will still, of course, yet to come in our game. But, well, in fact, we can now see that they're taking a different path.
After Queen takes D5, he played D4. Yeah, okay, the difference. We haven't played D3, so there's no knight on C6. We're trying to take advantage of that fact. After takes Bishop E3, trying to win the pawn, and of course, if E5, we have this Knight D4 idea that we had before the Queen.
I must admit, it still feels like an equalizing idea, as in, I'm not sure White is being as ambitious as he would like to be. Because, okay, if we play the obvious Knight C6, or he played D3, I should say. Maybe D3 is a good move.
Yeah, he played D3.
And here, strangely enough, White could still gambit a pawn with Knight D4 if he wanted to. And then I assume we could play D takes E2. And I must admit, I'd be tempted just to play Queen takes E2 and have lots of... Oh no, I can play Queen takes G2 and take the Queen. So no. I have to play Queen takes... I have to play Queen takes E2, I think. Okay, this would not be... Perhaps this is maybe not such a good gambit. But again, it's still difficult to develop the pieces. I'm not so sure, because it somehow doesn't really make sense to play...
Yeah, maybe...
Queen takes...
wants to play Knight E1, take with the Knight on D3. Could be an idea. Take with the Knight on D3. Because we don't want to ever take with the E-pawn. We just get an isolated pawn.
Yes, Knight E1 could be a good idea. Yes, that's true.
Quite possibly. There's a really bright light there on the cam. Must be the local TV.
The local TV have come in on the penultimate day, as it were.
Okay.
Shall we visit board 2, perhaps?
Yeah, very interesting matchup on board 2. And we want to see the opening developments as much as we can, so we're up to date. Yeah, Rappert has been playing knight f3 more or less in all his games, I think. And Shaq played knight f6, g3. And we have symmetry here, d4. So now the question is, will Black go for a Grunfeld with d5, which I think he has played plenty of times, or played d6. He goes with d6, which, yeah.
No, it's
more aggressive.
I was going to say it's a more ambitious attempt because he knows that with the King's Indian he will get a very messy position, and with the Grunfeld there are many forcing lines where basically Black has to defend slightly worse positions, and okay, he can get equality, but he needs to win this position. Of course, with rapport, nothing is really guaranteed.
No.
That in fact a standard King's Indian position will actually appear.
So a4, trying to gain some space on Queen's side, perhaps. I think I've seen Oleg Romanishyn play this line. Recently, I played him last summer, and I was preparing for the game, and I saw some games where he was playing this idea. a5, rook to e1, knight bd7, e4 and e5.
So we sort of have really a g3 Pietz almost.
Yeah, it's because white hasn't played the c-pawn yet. The pawn was on c4,
so
we'd have a King's Indian.
With the knight on c3, it would just become a Pietz position, really, with g3.
Fianchetto.
With
exactly.
a fianchetto. And it's not the most aggressive line for.
That's what happened.
Yeah. So this is one of these. The idea of the fianchetto position with white against the Pietz is that after the usually inevitable e takes d4, knight takes d4, is that the bishop on g2 overprotects the e4 square. Traditionally, in these positions, we would like to. White would like to overprotect the e4 square because Black has the open e file as opposed to your normal Sicilian dragon type positions where there's something on the c file. So Black can play rook e8, knight c5. So we wish to overprotect the e4 pawn. A very typical maneuver here for White is in fact to play h3, g4, knight e2, knight g3. And the idea for White in these positions is basically, if I can maintain my pawn in e4, if I can overprotect my pawn in true Nimzowitschen style, I can keep a small edge, and then I later on expand. But as you can see from the rather colorful arrows, my co-commentator said, it seems quite, Black can play all these normal moves and attack the e4 pawn. Again, because this is sort of an unusual transposition to different openings, we will have to probably come back because I'll spend quite a fair bit of time here. We can say that Mamedyarov has in fact had this position with a4 once before in his career, and in that position he played c5. So if there was any actual preparation, it would not have come. So in this position he's played c5 versus Zurab Sturua in the European Championship in Istanbul. So we can officially say that rapport is not really looking for something specific. It's just
it was a long time ago.
It was. Okay, so maybe we'll leave Jacques to his thoughts.
Then we go to board number 3 and see what Andrejkin is up to. He arrived here at the tournament hall with his friend Jacques Mamedyarov. They've been hanging out a lot in the tournament, eating together and doing various activities. And d4, g6. So I'm tracking with the black pieces, playing g6, just like his friend Mamedyarov, signaling aggressive intentions. So e4, and Black could go for a standard King's Indian here with knight f6, but perhaps wanting to avoid clear theoretical lines, because I believe Sabino Brunello is usually quite well prepared.
Very well prepared. He likes to play mainline positions with knight f3. He also likes the h3, g4 lines early on.
Okay.
We've already talked about Dmitry Andrejkin, that he's noted as a super grandmaster with a very, very solid super technical style when he plays other Super-Grandmasters. But he's already shown in this tournament by his Queen Sacrificial game, which was really just for positional compensation, that when he needs to mix it up, he is willing to play slightly unusual type openings in order to unbalance the position, to cause his opponent's practical problems early on. So as you can see here, he's trying to get some sort of king's in position, but he doesn't want to allow Brunello to bash out his 15 to 20 move mainline theory. He's trying to force him to work a bit harder in the opening, to spend a bit more time, to get a position that Brunello has not had on his computer this morning.
So once again, he doesn't mind the capture on e5, even though black loses his castling rights. We mentioned before that black quite likes such a position, so he'll put his king on c7, and he will have a hole here on d4 to play for with one of his knights eventually. So Brunello went d5, which is a much more popular choice in such structures. Knight d7, knight f3. So not a lot of moves so far, and both players spent, well, considerable time in the opening, considering...
Yes. I mean, Andreken himself in my database has never had this position before. He has played the modern, I believe, 14 times. And but this exact position hasn't occurred. He has played a position where the white player played knight f3 instead of the immediate d5, and he played bishop to g4.
Yes.
And that's basically the only time he's had this position.
That makes sense, to put pressure on the center.
But he has played the modern, and he's played different openings. He's played an early knight c6. He's played... He's not, the modern is still in his repertoire, but this exact position has not. Because frequently you do not play an early knight bd7, because we have delayed bringing out our knight to f6. We have early pressure on the d4 square. So it's very typical that black would like to play an early knight c6 and try to perhaps put the knight on d4. This is to me trying to transpose into a King's Indian, maybe try to get a position that's not part of Brunello's opening preparation with this h3 g4 line, which is the problem that he would like to play here. In his standard opening, he plays bishop e2, h3 g4, and he can't quite do it so easily here.
So let's keep going. Go to board number 4. Rambaldi went against Sarkisian.
We can see the players on the screen here. Gabriel Sarkisian on the left. The Grandmaster Rambaldi we have not actually seen on the top boards for quite a while. So it's a good chance to have a look at the youngster as well, the youngish player. And for Rambaldi, this is probably, I think, his first time he's got this high, to be honest, in the tournament. I can't remember him playing here. He's been always around, the slightly lower boards. But he's crept up to play Gabriel Sarkisian, who played a very, very impressive technical game yesterday. And Sarkisian is noted as a bit of a fighter who, how does one put it, he sort of sits there quietly, not taking many risks. And then he will actually try in the last couple of rounds. Or for him, almost the penultimate round is more important. He will try a little bit harder here if he gets a slightly weaker opponent. And even though Rambaldi is a 25-41 Grandmaster, for somebody who is 2700, that's 150 rating points, or 160.
Yeah, Sarkisian will look to pressure, I think, because he will have white in the last round. So
we should say that
set him up nicely.
We should say that Sarkisian is one of the best prepared e4, e5 players in the world. Had been Aronian's second for many years. And if anybody wishes to study e5 openings as black, Sarkisian is certainly one of the top level grandmasters whose games is worth following. In his repertoire is often the Berlin, but in this position, because he needs to win, he's playing a normal setup with black, because he doesn't want to allow white to simply exchange queens and get a dry position.
So we're going to get the more normal Spanish here with castles, bishop e7, rook e1, b5, and here with c3, of course, Rambaldi is inviting the martial attack with d5.
Again, even though it's very sharp, there are many lines for white that basically lead off into a draw.
Tends these days to be more draws than people would have considered this opening in the past. So d6, a more positional approach. And after h3, he plays knight d7.
This is a
rather recent trend, I believe, to put with the early bishop f6. d4 bishop f6, that's indeed what was played. And now a3. Okay, so
a3 to me is the slightly... a3 gets often played in these quiet positions to keep the bishop on the a2 g8 diagonal, but it's not really normal in this position. This bishop f6 used to be a very standard idea for many years, but it's recently, as my co-commentator Ingvar has mentioned, breathed a new lease of life. I believe that Peter Swidler, in fact, used something similar to this, with the idea, and this is a very interesting idea, of playing some sort of knight a5, taking on d4 and playing c5, and going for a Benoni type structure. But in fact, with a3, it's a little bit different. So you imagine the typical position with, say, knight bd2 instead of a3, and you would play something like knight a5, bishop c2, pawn takes, c5. And then after d5, you can see that it's a little bit like a Benoni, where black has achieved a6 and b5.
Well, usually black is trying to achieve this b5 move in the Benoni, but here he's already gotten it in.
So this is basically a more ambitious way to play for black. But the move a3, I must admit, is not going in with a principled classical approach by white. He's playing, not so much a high-class waiting move, but he's keeping the tension center. He wants to, I have to assume, keep his bishop on this long a2 g8 diagonal.
Knight b6 is the last move played by Sargsyan. And okay, Sargsyan hasn't spent too much time.
As I said, an incredibly well-prepared player, and he would have chosen this as a possibility. And knight b6, and now we still have a number of games in this position. But to be honest, not very many. We have the most famous player being former world champion Boris Spassky against the German Grandmaster Robert Hübner. And in this position, Hübner played bishop to a2. And the unusual rook b8 was played by Boris Spassky. And we believe that this was not the choice of Rambaldi to play bishop a2.
No, he played here pawn to d5.
The more principled move, I believe. The game between Hübner and Spassky was actually agreed, drawn a few moves later. And of course, what can happen here is there could be a transposition to another main line type position a bit later on. But to be honest, with the pawn on a3 and the knight on b6, it does lend a sort of a different flavor to the position. So this is not really well-known Spanish theory, to be honest. And the big idea is that if you play d5 in these positions before black has played c5, then black will traditionally be able to play some sort of c6 to attack the center. A very original position for players of the Spanish, because to be honest, the Spanish has been one of the main lines of chess for hundreds of years, and yet I'm not sure I've ever seen this position before.
Oh, I agree.
So I think that it's actually interesting to see where he puts the knight, because all the three or four squares, but there are three squares that all look possible. I don't really believe in knight a7 because it doesn't actually have a square to go to from the a7 square. b8 is not so ridiculous. e7 is ridiculous. a5 gains a tempo because white will keep the bishop.
b8 could come back to d7, often a standard idea in other lines.
So I think that Sargsyan will try this.
Let's just keep moving and see what openings we have. Board 5, Sheparinov against Pats.
Again, here Elizabeth needs to draw to keep her Grandmaster Norm's chances alive, as it were.
So once again, a d4 opening from Sheparinov. I actually think he used to be an e4 player, but he then added d4 to his repertoire in I think he's playing that mostly these days. We have this A6 line in the Slav, the Shepanenko Slav.
And Elizabeth has a very solid opening repertoire as black against strong players, and she's actually very good at sort of playing extremely solid openings and against the higher level grandmasters with a view to let them come and do all the hard work, as it were.
Sheparinov decides to play c5 immediately. Knight b7, bishop f4, and traditionally this gives black the chance at some point to break with b6 to try to counter this expansion by white. Bishop h5.
Yes, the small offer of the
small draw offer. I mean,
the small draw offer. As
white could go back and ask black if she wants to play, but of course white wants to play here. And okay, he kind of gained the tempo because the bishop went back to d2. If he goes back to c1, we just have the exact same position. But instead, going back to d2, we actually gained a small tempo, but shouldn't be a huge difference.
Many times white just plays e3 and allows the bishop to be taken on f4, and the e5 square is still under control.
Yeah, in these positions, yeah. Something like this, when he tries to keep a good hold on this e5 square. But okay, went back with bishop, now queen c2, g6, g3. And we have some normal developing moves. Black plays rook e8, because most often black is trying to play e5 to free up his position. Rook a to d1, and now b5. Okay, b6 can be played. Perhaps b5 is more forcing, because in that way black might think about closing the queen side. So if white wants to do anything on the queen side, he must take here.
Yeah, and normally taking on b6 is desirable once black has played a6, because we have the obvious weakness on c6 now.
The black square will be...
Traditionally, if you could, you play a takes b, you take towards the center, you can play c5, the c5 is protected. Here there is a very clear target on the c6, so Liz has to try to get c5 and get it out of the way, if possible.
Knight e5.
Immediately targeting the weakness.
But she flicks in bishop f5, attacking the queen. Queen c1, she protects the pawn, and now bishop h6. And okay, Sheparinov 10 minutes behind on the clock. Usually we see him playing very fast in the opening.
It's still, like I said, a slightly unusual position, especially this bishop back to d2 is still not quite considered the main way to play.
Yeah, we can see he started thinking for 10 minutes after b5, so probably that was the first point where he was slightly surprised. But okay, Elizabeth is trying to play solidly. A draw for her here would be a good result. I'm actually eager to see Tanya's game on board 7.
The game where basically Tanya needs a draw for her second Grandmaster. We can say that, interestingly enough, in that previous game, that they had actually reached that position. He's hasn't put it. Sargsyan has actually reached that position with white beforehand. So it's not an unknown position, but in fact Queen c1 was not the move played. So I believe that they're both on unknown territory.
So my obsession with the white pieces, he played the English opening. Tanya goes for e5, perhaps the most principled option. And we have a Sicilian here with colors reversed. Queen c2, a bishop e7. So after e3, it's sort of like a time maneuver for a Khan with colors reversed. a6. Mavsesyan took on d5, bishop d3, and queen to d6. Of course, black can't castle because of the battery on the diagonal, so H7 would be under attack.
It's an unusual position, of course, because normally in the English we always assume that G3 will happen. It looks a bit like one of these Khan, Taimanov type positions where you play the early bishop d6 and you're going to play b4, bishop b2. He's done this to use his greater experience. He plays the Sicilian Taimanov Khan positions himself. He in fact had a similar position with reverse colours. He was in this Richard Rapport game where he was actually on the other side, as it were.
That's true.
And in this sort of position, he just wants Tanya to spend more time in the opening, to play something unusual. I don't have any game of Movsesian with this position, so there's no possible preparation, I believe, for the...
he's mostly an e4 player.
Yeah, he
So
has
maybe
got
an
quite a few
interesting
English,
choice. Yeah.
but these English games are traditionally transposed back into G3 lines. Playing E3 is not really a typical sequence.
B4. That's what he played.
He's basically playing the Taimanov with reverse colours, which is very interesting, of course. And it's a little bit provocative as well, because if he gets bishop b2 and castle kingside and rook ac1, at some stage he may get a dream position with the tempo up, as it were. So
Those are the normal moves if black really doesn't do anything much. And b4 makes it harder for black to castle kingside, queenside, if he was ever thinking about that. But
no, I mean, in this position, normally black wants to castle kingside, bishop e6, f6, very solidly. And the queen and bishop battery on c2 and d3 stop black from castling and playing the most obvious maneuver. So it's interesting that this has actually happened. We believe that
this is still a Turezaga against Artjev.
And what's interesting about this is, of course, we have to assume that Movsesian has seen this game. He's liked the position that Bonelli got and won against Tanya Sachdev.
Yeah, in 2011 in Pamplona.
And very interesting. Very interesting that Tanya, of course, will know this. She'll be sitting there remembering her own game that she lost.
Most likely.
Oh no, she has quite an impressive memory.
Yeah.
And in this position, black played bishop e6. White continued on with bishop b2. Bishop to f6, overprotecting the e5 square. Rook c1, again, all very natural moves. We can see that we still can't castle, which we'd like to do. So we're saying this is the previous game played by Tanya in this exact position, which is almost certainly been the main part of Sergei Movsesian's morning, as it were. Bishop d5, and here the opponent saw the minor threat of not only capturing on f3, but e4, and played bishop e4 himself. And after takes, after capture, queen takes e4, managed to castle. And in this game, the very aggressive g4 was played. And the worst thing is when you lose a game and your opponent pushes g4 and h4, which is what actually happened in the game, and you get basically you get a losing position. It's another reason why you spend a long time on the opening, because this is an incredibly important game for Tanya Sachdev. This is possibly her second Grandmaster norm, and she knows that she's had this position before. She knows that her far higher rated opponent has spent the morning preparing. So if she's been a good girl and done her homework, and hopefully she will be able to come up with something. But you can see that she looks a little bit, well, it's obviously not her preparation. And she's trying to work out, well, how do I avoid this? How do I not repeat this? So again, a psychological battle being played out on our screens as Movsesian has left, calmly, confidently walking around, and Tanya Sachdev has been left to remember her game from 5 years ago in Pamplona. So many times in chess we have these psychological battles happening.
Meanwhile, we're going to jump to some, let's see if there are some interesting openings. One idea is the Shabalov game on board 16, which should have
there he is.
the bird's opening.
No.
Click the wrong one. There it is. There it is.
I believe that Shabalov, after having a disappointing last couple of rounds, has decided that he's going to mix it up in the last couple and avoid opening theory, play a little bit aggressively. We can also tell you that in the candidates tournament, which started 3 hours before our own round, there was a quick draw between the American Hikaru Nakamura and the Dutch Anish Giri. And now we believe that the Russian Peter Swidler has also drawn with top Armenian Levon Aronian.
And I saw the game a bit before we started, and it looked like should be heading for a draw. Was an ending. Meanwhile, Nakamura and Giri finished quite quickly with a repetition. So Shabalov is playing in the spirit of Henrik Danielsson with that's d4.
G6, bishop G7 is a very famous anti-Dutch idea, especially as black. And when white plays G3, it's interesting. And again, this is just, there are many obviously possible moves here for both sides because it is a very flexible opening. But one of the advantages of not playing an early knight to f6 is that black will often play the very strange looking, well, he can play something like d5, which is a normal move, and after bishop g2 he plays this unusual looking c6 move. And the whole idea is that, of course, in this Leningrad Dutch, we wish to play for d3 and e4, very normal idea. But by playing the unusual looking c6, we're actually trying to somehow annoy white with queen b6. So therefore, an idea would be, for example, d3, knight h6, waiting for white to castle. And after castles, we play queen b6 check. And this would force white to play d4. And then that would mix up the white structure because he wishes to play for e4. He now has the typical Stonewall Dutch structure with the bishop on g2.
d4, of course, because we have b2 hanging, so we can't play e3.
So this is one of the ideas of playing g6, bishop g7 to keep as many options open. But also, as we can see here, he's played d6 because in the Dutch, one of the main ideas is to play your stronghold on e5. And therefore, by playing a d6 pawn move, there will never be the standard knight e5 ideas that happen quite often. But
so quite often the pawn is on d5, and then white will, in many lives, be controlling the e5 square.
But of course, here in this position, black can still play for c5, for e5. There are many possible ideas. And in fact, he went for the c5 idea.
And now c3. So
it's interesting that he played an early d4 himself. Did he really play d4?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, well, this is a very interesting idea by Alexander Shabalov.
I'm wondering where he is going to put the e-pawn.
Yes. Because if you put it on e3, I've got to be honest, your bishop on c1 will usually complain.
Yeah.
And usually the bishop still wants to go to g2, and yet if in a proper...
You're fianchettoed, but you're playing a Stonewall, or you put the bishop. So maybe he wants to put it on e4, but then he's
a very original
perhaps overextended
structure.
a bit. Knight f6, so now you can't play e4, which might have been an idea otherwise, if castles. So yeah.
No, original play by Alexei Shabalov quite early on.
I'd venture to guess that you would not find more than 2 or 3 games.
No, I have even not tried to look it up in fear of.
No. I mean, this is not theoretical at all. So.
And in fact, the game has continued. After knight f6, we had c takes d4, c takes d4.
First.
And in fact, after knight f6, white just played knight c3. And it's quite strange, but of course, if he can, he'll play e4. And then we have a rather unusual looking Piet's dragon. No, not a dragon.
E4 might be an option.
It's a Piet's where you play G3, and yet you don't want to play bishop to G2. You want to usually put it on the D3 square.
Yes.
Shabalala is a very original thinker, so I think we'll leave him because there's a huge number of moves they can play here.
Yes. We have a dragon sighting.
And actually, to be honest, if I was black here, I would try to maybe annoy Shabalala and just play D5.
Yeah, that could be an excellent option, actually.
That would be the typical move. That's why I feel one of the reasons he's thinking is just to play D5 and say, you're not getting E4 in. Bishop F5 might be another move as well.
Yeah.
The two moves that basically stop white playing E4. D5 and Bishop F5. Or Queen A5 would be
so good. We have a dragon sighting. So
well, we've had quite a lot of dragon theory.
Yeah, most of them in Alexander Voromir's games, but let's see. So it's Moulton with white, and he's playing against local Icelandic Jón Kristjánsson.
Is he a young player by any chance?
No, he's actually on the opposite end. He's an older gentleman.
I always think that dragon players are young kids, of course.
2014 was the 50-year anniversary of the Reykjavik Open. The first edition was in 1964.
Oh.
And Jón Kristjánsson played in the first Reykjavik Open in 1964.
So he's been there, done that, as it were.
Yes, so still quite a strong player, very tough to beat. And he was a very strong player back in the day.
No, it's interesting because usually if you're going to play something like the dragon against a stronger player, you usually want to be quite well prepared. Of course, for special tournaments like your local Super Open, which is the Reykjavik Open for all Icelandic players, many of the local players will actually do extra work in preparation for the tournament because if they're not willing to travel, this is their one big local event per year.
I think in that first Reykjavik Open, Jón actually played against Mikael Tal in a famous game, and basically Tal was more or less forced to repeat positions, otherwise he would be worse, but he chose to be worse. He sacrificed his queen for 2 pieces and won famously, and after the game he said that he didn't travel all the way from Riga to make a short throw.
So we see
mainline,
which is always nice to see. I like to see a bit of sharp theory.
Queen d2, castles, and queenside castles.
Now normally here you play d5, of course, because we have not played bishop c4 stopping it. That is the standard main way to stop d5.
Yes.
Bishop d7 is a line, but black's got to be a little bit careful that he does not transpose. If he plays something like knight a5, knight c4, bishop takes c4 can happen, and we've won a couple of tempi for nothing.
Let's say, black goes knight e5 here. And we play a standard line, and then black plays knight c4. White has kind of saved the tempo because in the old lines, bishop c4, bishop e3 has already happened.
And what's interesting about this position is that black played knight e5, and traditionally when you play bishop d7 in the modern times, you're trying to transpose, you're trying to get what is known now as the Topalov dragon, where you play knight takes d4 and b5, and you try to somehow get some counterplay like this. But by playing knight e5, he's playing against, playing more the traditional, I want to put the knight on c4. But again, I'm a little bit worried that if he plays knight c4 too quickly, then it'll just be a normal position, white's 2 tempi up.
Yeah.
But as you have said, he's a very experienced player, so he would know that putting the knight early to c4 would be not a good idea.
Okay, Moulton played g5, and now already knight e8 looks unusual to c7. And here Moulton played f4 with knight g4 to follow. Okay,
this is quite a committal move to play f4 because the knight on g4 is usually very well placed. We normally, as white, wish to keep our dark squared bishop. It is the bishop that usually does a lot of damage at black's kingside. And here the the young Australian just continued on with f5. This is quite a committal move because, okay, you're giving up the e5 square, but obviously you're threatening to play bishop takes g4 and then keep rolling with h5, cutting off the protection from d7. But I've got to be honest, all dragon players would be tempted by taking that bishop on e3. Yes? You want to take on e3 and you say, I have the dark squared bishop. One big problem here is that normally there's queen b6 or queen a5.
Yeah, this knight is...
and the knight is not good.
Because now we're dominating it a bit. So
my problem is I don't know where the knight on c7 is going to go. I was told...
if I could put it here, I might be happy.
Oh no, a knight on e5, I'd be a happy man. I was told many times that the knight on c7 is never good in the Sicilian because it just blocks the queen coming out and it generally doesn't have an obvious square going forward. So I've got to be honest, it looks an unusual position where the bishop might get exchanged, but the knight on c7 I don't like. And to be honest, even after knight takes c3, queen takes c3, I kind of think white must be a little bit better. So not a normal dragon, but still a very interesting one. Alongside this position, if we very quickly go to it, we have, I think it's, I was going to say, Stefan Christensen, just below Moulton Lie. Yes, and we believe that he might be recovering quickly to win.
Okay, already. So he played the c3 Sicilian, which he has been playing for many years, along with many other Icelandic players. 95. Yeah, there's the one online.
Yes,
knight c6, knight f3.
And now there's also the possibility of strange ideas like c4, bishop c2,
Yes.
queen c7.
c4, bishop c2, queen c7, and there's a queen e2. There's
Yes, the very unusual but
move.
dramatic g5 move.
Yeah,
this is
just
such is the way of modern chess.
undermine this guy and try to win the central pawn.
But this was not chosen.
He went instead for e6. d4 was played, d6. White took it. Okay, white is accepting the isolated pawn, but he's getting a lot of quick and easy development and good squares.
Okay, knight e7
pieces,
a little bit unusual because, okay, he wants to play the knight to d5,
Yeah,
so
wants to
maybe
block.
he was afraid of knight d5. But I've got to admit, it kind of means the bishop on f8 is not so happy. If black has a few moves in a row and he could play knight e d5, bishop e7, castle kingside, bishop f6, he would indeed be happy. But I must admit, it's a little bit... I can understand that he wants to stop d5, but with your king still on e8, you have to be a little bit careful. So white just castled.
And now g6, he wants to fianchetto.
I must admit, he's played knight e7, and he's played g6, and when you see a hole on f6 like this, with the queen on d6, we have to ask ourselves, what happens if you play knight to e4? Because it kind of looks a little bit embarrassing.
He has no way to protect f6.
And I must admit, at first glance, it looks like white will play knight to f6 check, and then think later.
I mean, I would play this instantly and,
and
then think. That's just a horror. Jesus,
And
just a
I've got to
horrible
be
blunder.
honest. I've got to be honest. Maybe I play knight e5 straight away without thinking. Have a look. Knight e5. And then you look at your position. You go get a cup of coffee. You probably get a bit of cheesecake because you think your opponent's going to sit there for a little while. And I've got to be honest. It looks ruined already. You have to protect.
Just knight anywhere and bishop g5.
Bishop g5, developing with tempo.
Then we can play rook g1. So looks
So
like
I'm sorry, we are being a little bit comical here, but it's rare that in these top tournaments that you can play so quickly such devastating moves. And it's always we've all played blunders where we're getting hit. Basically, it's like walking into a boxing match and suddenly realize that it's Mike Tyson on the other side and he doesn't really look friendly. And then you play the bad move.
you might as well just end the game and go bishop e7 and go home.
So I must admit, I feel that Mikael Johan Carlsen may be having a rather early shower after knight to f6 check and knight e5.
Yeah.
So I only noticed this because it's rare to get such a position early on.
Ah, yes.
And, well,
This
okay.
looks like game over and another quick day for Stefan Christensen. But fortunately, this time around in the correct win column. Thorfinnsson against Arjan Tari could be interesting as well. I always like to look at the games of the brothers.
Yes, yes. And interestingly enough, Arjan Tari yesterday had to play another boy wonder in the young lad from America.
He won the young
and they drew.
Yeah.
But it's quite interesting because at some stage Arjan Tari looked like he was a little bit annoyed at having to play someone younger than himself, who is obviously quite a strong player. And I thought, well, we've all had to suffer this with you, so why don't you get to suffer a little bit as well? And yes, I must admit, even though I did not know them very well before this tournament, the Thorfinnsson brothers have been excellent players to follow in the entertainment stakes, as it were. Both brothers have been playing very sharp positions all throughout the tournament. So I imagine they're quite a lot of fun in a bar later on.
Yes.
If they play chess the same, usually. So
Bishop d2, Bishop c5. So
we should say that Arjan Tari, of course, is a very young, 15-year-old, extremely well-prepared Norwegian. So by playing in English with Bishop g2, he's trying to play quite opening, trying to avoid the masses of theory that Arjan Tari has already been studying for a number of his young years.
Yes, I mean he's starting. They have in Norway. They have a school, special school for children.
Yes, for elite sportsmen, shall we say, and chess is one of these disciplines.
Exactly.
And very often the leading Scandinavian, not so much Norwegian, all of Scandinavia can send its best sportsmen there, and this includes chess players.
I think they have 3 or 4 in each rating, age category that go to the school, and most of them are playing here.
Yes, and very often this group that comes over with Simon Agustin and other senior players, and one of the big advantages is you get to go to a overseas tournament as a group, where you spend a lot of time analysing with each other, you keep each other company. It's an ideal way to improve as a chess player.
Yeah, so Björk played c4 this time around. Usually he's playing d4. He played a really nice attacking game 2 rounds ago with d4. And Tari is going for this solid Karpov system with bishop on c5. a6, quite usual to get a square for the bishop here in case white tries to get the bishop for a knight. Knight g2. Tucks the bishop on a7 right away. Okay, he's avoiding perhaps being hit with a tempo. And if he were to put the bishop on e6, he would be hit again, so maybe he wants to have it on e6 at some point, so that's why he goes back.
Oh.
And now h5.
A rather aggressive move, signaling his intentions that he wishes to cause some damage. Of course, the knight is on e2, so therefore with the knight on f3, h5 would not be a really consideration.
Yes.
But with the knight on e2 already committed, he can think about expanding on the queen side, and it does look a little bit like one of these Sicilian positions where you're trying to play an early h5. So you've got to imagine that black could play bishop e6, queen d2, h5, and you can see the idea. If white castles early,
we have
h4,
a quick attack. Here.
But Bjorn has decided that he's not going to commit himself to castling kingside early. And interestingly, he's not afraid to play h0, h4. He's just playing the typical aggressive queenside expansion with b4.
He's not afraid of complications, and he's not afraid of taking risks. So
well, Tari is kept going.
Potentially become interesting. h4 and our queen to a4.
Okay, so a rather I have to double check. I was going to say a rather obvious threat, but I have to confirm that it is of playing b5, ab, c takes b, b6 discovered check.
Yeah, if it were white to move, you might have this.
Knight would move, and then b6 check.
Yeah, but I'm wondering where to move the knight, but okay, let's go. Here, b6 check.
We've been told that Stefan Christensen has in fact checkmated his opponent from that game.
Shall we perhaps, because we don't see many checkmates?
No, we don't see many checkmates.
Have a look at the checkmates.
Yes, but we'll have a little look after here. So this is the threat. So we normally would now play, I think, an obvious move like bishop to d7, I guess, would be the obvious move. b5 is a threat. And now I have to come up with a move for white, because the problem with bishop d7 is that we are threatening some version of knight d4. So therefore, I think white would normally in this position play, I don't know, queen to b3, I guess, and the game would continue. But I think that bishop d7 looks like the natural and possibly forced move, because if not, I'm walking into this b5 idea. And as soon as you see this battery, this hidden battery with the bishop and the knight being threatened, I think queen b3. To be honest, queen b3 with the idea of b5 still looks quite nice idea. To be honest.
I wonder if we have to go queen b3.
You want to be a little bit.
Why didn't we do it straight away? So I'm wondering if. Well, maybe we can do b7. I don't know, but I'm wondering if he has some interesting idea in mind here. Which
okay, but I will play knight d4. I think, if you let me.
I don't really see anything.
No, there's nothing terrible. Maybe there's no big threat.
There's one idea. If black. Well, actually. Yeah, it takes and bishop d4. Because the a1 rook is hanging, so it's.
Yes, it's not so.
Well, this is complicated, so let's just start grabbing stuff and see. Yes, this is good for white. This might be one idea. I mean, not very, nothing that's going to happen.
No.
A typical idea that.
The sort of things that it's very easy for commentators to do analysis.
Yeah.
But even the entertaining brothers from Iceland might find this a little bit frightening. But he's played queen a4, signaling aggressive intentions. And to be honest, you'd play bishop d7 in a rapid play game quite quickly. So he may have an idea behind it.
Okay, well,
we'll keep an eye on this game.
Keep an eye on this, and Johannesson Dvirni.
Yes, he's been a very original player, the Grandmaster Daniel Dvirni. He's played many interesting games this tournament.
He has the white pieces against Gumi Kjartansson, and Guðmundur is playing the Nimso, which is, I think, more or less his favorite. He plays the Queen's Gambit declined as well. E4. Yeah,
e4 is usually in these positions. E4. Well, normally you don't play b6 is a slightly unusual line to begin with, we should say. And now white has committed himself to e4, and it's an unusual idea because whenever you play e4 very early in the Nimzo Indian, the black can often play bishop takes c3, and you are usually forced to capture with the pawn in this position because the e4 pawn is under attack. So you are quite happy to give yourself the double pawns, compensated by the large rolling pawn center.
Yeah.
And normally here white will play bishop d3, knight e2, and then push the f pawn as well. Basically trying to send all the central pawns forward, backed up by the two bishops.
Yeah.
And black wants to blockade, obviously, and he will not play d5. He will try to attack the weak c pawns with the typical knight c6, knight a6, bishop a6 type of ideas.
Yeah. But generally, black doesn't take on c3 unless white plays a3.
Yes. So black played c5, a natural idea.
Yeah. Okay, white grabs the space. Queen e7, perhaps, with some ideas of taking on d5. So white blocks the e file. He takes d5 still. Now we must take with the e pawn,
which is unusual, of course, in itself.
Yeah, this is the standard reaction, but here e4 would hang. So he takes with the e pawn, castles bishop to d2. Now he takes on c3, which must have a concrete idea. Yeah, knight e4, rook e8, and here we have some interesting moves. Bishop c1, but of course white wants to keep the bishop.
His big advantage, his only advantage here, is the long-term advantage of the two bishops. If black could play knight takes d2, queen takes d2, I don't think his position is very easy to play. He plays d6, knight bd7, knight e5.
The chat is saying that Karjakin just defeated Anand.
Oh.
It's quite interesting.
That's a rather big, that means Karjakin has moved to +2.
Yes.
So that's quite a big thing, of course, and Anand goes back to 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
I think people might be sleeping a little bit on Karjakin. I told a lot of people before the tournament that he's definitely a contender. And
yes, he would not be the first name many people have mentioned, because to be honest, even though he has been a top player for quite a few years now, he does not really seem to win all these major tournaments, although with the rather obvious exception of the knockout tournament, which was the World Cup that actually allowed him to participate qualify for the candidates. But normally in the round robins, the super elite round robins, he has always done well, but he is not normally a winner. So Bishop
except for the Norwich, yes, he does. He did actually well there. Won that one twice. But okay, King F8. What is the idea there? Must have some idea. Do you think Karjakin has beaten Alan before?
I cannot recollect, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure they've played each other in blitz and rapid play, but I don't have any recollection of Karjakin ever having defeated Viswanathan Anand before. So it's very possible that today was the first day that Karjakin has defeated his more famous, more illustrious, older opponent. And a lot of chess players would take this almost as a good sign, as a little bit of fate saying that today you've actually defeated him for the first time, and you get to +2. Yeah, it's a big thing, to be honest.
It's a good start for him, for sure. King F8.
Yes, an unusual move.
Perhaps he wants to have the rook protected.
Yes, he wants to move the queen. Queen H4
queen somewhere.
No, Queen H4 perhaps. I think is an idea to basically move the queen and then threaten some sort of discovered. The other problem, of course, in this position is that it's actually quite hard for white to move the knight. Their knight to any square looks a little bit terrifying, because then the queen moves and then bad things will happen. Even maybe knight moves, but here Queen H4.
Yeah, I'm wondering if
you want to see if there's an immediate knight takes F. No.
No, I don't think there's anything. So. Hey, but of course, moving the knight is quite dangerous.
Because one of the ideas, of course, is that if you move the knight on E2, some strange knight move will happen, and after queen takes queen, rook takes, you'll have to lose another tempo, and wherever we put the knight, it could be very well a big idea. So I'm going to be honest, if I'm white here, I want to see if I can play where your pawn is. I want to play G3. Because I just want to play bishop G2 and continue my development and say I've got 2 bishops. And it also stops knight H4, but I've got to be honest, it's the only, or the easy, lazy way of getting my bishop out and castle and kingside.
Yes.
And if I can do this and castle kingside without anything happening to me, then I'm going to happily point to my 2 bishops. I have bigger space and 2 bishops.
Board 4, Rambaldi against.
Shall we visit our top boards one more time?
Just have a roundabout on the top boards. We had this knight b6 move.
Oh yes, our
things are getting rather.
We can see both players actually looking at the view and not the chessboard. Very unusual on our screens. And it's always, because they're playing here in the famous concert and convention center, the Harper Center, in the heart of Reykjavik city, which actually is on the water. So very often on the top boards, which are on the edge of the playing venue, you have a beautiful view over the water, which of course, when they often look towards the camera, they're not looking at the camera, making faces for their wives to say, yes, I am here, everything is okay, I did remember to shave this morning. They're in fact looking out over the ocean. Yeah.
So, Gabriel
so this did happen.
Played the typical break that you talked about earlier when we looked at the game, c6. Typical way to break in the center, but he didn't take back on c6. He played the knight to bishop to e6.
Well, the pawn on c6, of course, is not long for this world, shall we say? But it's interesting he did this.
Bishop d5, rook c8, and now bishop e3.
Bishop e3 is interesting.
Because
you got to be a little bit careful.
One idea is if you take, I can take here, then take on b6, and then
Yes,
think
D6.
about taking the d6 pawn.
Yes, yes, yes. And this would probably signify that something has gone wrong. So after bishop e3, we should try to come up with a better move. To be honest, the obvious move that you always look at as soon as you play bishop e3 is to throw a knight into c4. Let's say knight on a to c4, thinking that the c pawn is still okay. Are you going to let me take your bishop on e3? Actually, maybe it should be the other way around. Maybe it should be knight on 6, perhaps.
Perhaps, yeah.
And now if I get to play knight takes e3, knight takes e6, I'm quite happy. But I don't think you let me. I'm not sure. What do you do here as white? Very often, in these positions, white usually plays bishop c1, then plays b3 and kicks him off. But here he's just played bishop e3, so I would assume that he's not really wanting to do this. And of course, bishop takes c4 is not the move you want to play. So I just want to attack your bishop. I don't really know what white's going to do. Yeah, I think black is fine, actually. If I get to play knight takes e3, rook takes, and then knight takes e6, I don't really feel that white has achieved anything out of the opening. Obviously, a lot of these slow Spanish positions are considered equal, with many pieces still on the board. White is only playing for a small edge.
Yeah, I would tend to trust Sarkisian.
No, I mean, Sarkisian is such a classically trained player. I think there are no troubles here for black. I'm sure there are other moves here as well, but one of the knights to c4 looks very obvious, to be honest. The main reason we chose knight bc4 is we want to just recapture the pawn on c6 with the knight on a5, and then we would say that a position has happened. And it's still Gabriel Sarkisian's move. So I think we can let him perhaps sit there. Maybe we visit some of the other top boards.
Yeah.
Shall we have a quick look on the board 1 perhaps, which was the Gupta game, playing against Swedish Grandmaster Grandilius? Because we left it at this unusual d3 move, all the way back there. And we were thinking knight d4 was a possible idea, knight e1 a possible idea. He chose your knight e1.
Yeah. Queen went back to d6.
That way he can play knight takes d3.
Yeah.
So I think this is
Keep his pawn structure intact.
Yes, this was the safer way to play this position instead of knight d4. Keeping the pawn structure, the bishop on g2 is very strong. Again, if black gets to play normal developing moves like knight c6 and bishop f5, he seems fine. So knight c6 did happen. Rook c1, again, another natural move, threatening to perhaps later on, well, maybe even now, take on c6 and double the pawns. A little bit sharp, but the main idea is obviously to take and play queen c2 or queen a4 and at least create the immediate weakness on c6.
Yeah, weakness here, and the white piece is quite well placed.
And Gupta did not like this idea, so he immediately advanced.
Rook e1.
Overprotecting the e2 pawn.
Rook d8. Threatening to take on e2 now, and then on d3.
And now the interesting queen a4 move.
But now, if you were to take...
He walks into rook d2.
Yes. When this guy hangs at the end, no way to protect it.
The bishop on c8 being the culprit here, not having developed, so you're initiating tactics a little bit too early.
No way to bail out, because we have queen e8 check. And rook takes. Do we have maybe bishop d7 is an option.
Very clever.
But in that case, okay, maybe I will play queen somewhere and b7 hangs, and white will probably win his pawn back quite easily.
So yes, queen a4 is the last move played. We can see the players now on our screen.
So perfectly natural that...
Grandilius says yes, well actually it's Gupta to move, and he has rather a critical move here. I don't believe he'll actually play knight takes e2. He's got very obvious moves here. Okay, you want to just develop the bishop traditionally. Oh, well, b7 is on. So if I play bishop d7 to bishop to c6.
Yeah, that's one.
Just the
natural idea.
Just put the bishop on c6 to oppose the bishop on g2, and if you can do it with tempo, it's always very nice. Queen has to move, of course. I don't actually see a very obvious square, in all honesty. Where would you put the queen?
I don't know.
When I played bishop d7, in my head I was just rerouting it to c6, and very often you go bishop d7, queen moves, bishop c6. Now I actually have to choose where to put the queen. I don't really have a good square.
No? I have to admit I don't see a very good square for the queen. I mean,
okay, but
the idea can't be to go back, and getting pressure here for the double pawns doesn't seem enough. So, yeah, bishop d7 seems quite natural, but he must have something in mind here. Must have something in mind, but
well, if we play queen a3, queen takes queen, captures, and I guess at bishop c6 we can play bishop takes d4. Maybe this is the idea.
That could be the idea, and then take here. And probably white
can claim a little, maybe not much. I don't think really this is the greatest ambitious line of Grandulius, but I have to be honest, I really don't see where you put the queen.
Nope.
I think we will let, Gupta has to play bishop d7 first, of course, but it looks like a obvious developing move.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we'll leave Gupta and maybe we go to the battle of the two of the highest rated players in the tournament, Richard Rapport versus Shak Mamedov on board 2.
Yeah, I went for the wrong one. Oh. Yeah, the number 1 and number 3 seeds.
Yes, and quite a lot of things have happened since we left it. And we left it after knight c3, I believe, e5, yes. Knight c3, this funny piece.
Rook e8 was played.
Oh, this is another, So we continue on. We can see the idea of h3. And frequently in this position, one idea, which we'll see in a move or two, is to play bishop e3 and to take with the bishop. Yes,
that's what it did.
So it's interesting because we're so used to playing knight takes d4.
Yeah.
But bishop takes d4 is a very, very normal idea in these positions. And white slowly actually expands with g4 later. But the bishop on d4 does an excellent job on d4. It's one of the only openings I know where traditionally you take on d4 with the bishop. It is slightly unusual. Black continued on with queen c7.
Queen d2. Preparing to put the rook on d1 at some point. Knight h2. He prefers to keep the pieces on. Knight c4.
Yes, hitting the queen and the pawn on b2.
But white counterattacked here with queen g5.
And hitting the knight on f6.
Yes. So how does black deal with it? He plays the queen back to d8.
Can I ask what happens if you play the natural move, which would be to immediately hit the queen with h6 instead of this?
Here. Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe I just play queen h4 and because normally if you can hit the queen before you take an f6, the queen must have a good square to go back to. But here h4 and f4 I assume are acceptable ideas, except you got queen h4 g5.
h4 is
and if queen f4,
queen f4
I can
might be
still
playable.
Play
maybe g4 still.
It's just interesting that h6 was not really considered.
No, then we have knight h5. So
I don't know. I mean, h6 is the move you tend to ask the question. Why not h6? I am sure that Rapport would come in afterwards.
I guess he would have to come back to c1.
Yes. Well, I was actually going to say this is not as silly as it looks because you are threatening bishop takes f6, queen takes h6. So maybe this is the idea. Queen c1 will actually win a strange tempo, because you have to waste a move playing king h7 or something to not lose the pawn at h6. So that's probably the reasoning behind queen d8. And this is where we are now. We still have our minor problem on b2.
Yes.
I believe we can see rapport here. He has to deal with this problem. It is actually a genuine problem, because I can play knight takes b2, and there seems to be no reason why I can't retreat back to c4. There's no easy way to trap the knight. So
b3 is probably an option, unless there are tactics. Don't really.
No, I don't think the.
You have to always be careful about something being hit here with d4 hanging, and yeah, the queen on g5 as well.
Yes, but whenever we play b3, we always have to be a little bit careful.
Something like this looks natural for white.
Would it be better then to throw in h6 and force the queen back? No, I meant b3 queen, because if the queen goes back, where does the queen go now? Because if I force back to c1, there's no rook a d1. And the queen doesn't have such a, pardon me, an obvious square, as we mentioned before.
If you go to h4, it's trapped. If you go to f4, you can play knight h5. The queen has no good way to protect the bishop, actually. So most likely he would have to go back to
c1.
To c1.
And this is a minor victory, because we can't play the obvious rook a d1. And the rook on a1 there's no trouble with it for immediately, but it's always a little bit unpleasant when you have a rook on a1 against the bishop on g7. So this is quite an interesting position, to be honest. I think it's dynamically equal. Neither side has any tangible advantage. I think Mamedov would be quite happy as black. But to be honest, Richard Rapport has not tried for advantage in any white game in this tournament. He just wants a complicated position.
Yes.
Maybe here you play the utterly boring rook a b1. I'm not sure.
In this one?
I don't know. I want to protect my b2 pawn. b3, h6, queen c1. I'm not sure if I want to play b3 or not. If I'm forced, if I cannot play rook a d1 with tempo afterwards. I honestly don't know, but I'm always a bit wary of playing a pawn weakness when my rook cannot easily come to the center. But you can see that this is quite an interesting moment, because Richard Rapport is usually a very fast player. He's usually somebody who wants to play very aggressively, and in this position he's actually using quite a lot of time for this. It leads me that the obvious move, which would be b3, is not perhaps the easiest one to play. But b3 is obviously one of the candidate moves, along with rook a b1 and, dare I say it, queen c1. But it'd be strange if you played queen c1 here, to be honest. So, and I believe you have to protect the pawn on b2. It's a strange position, mainly because of the knight on h2. In all fairness, the knight on h2 does not normally go there in these g3 fianchetto positions. I don't know. Yeah, I think we'll let Richard Rapport continue. We can see here Rapport in deep contemplation with Grandmaster Brunello looking on. We may go perhaps to the other top boards now, as Richard Rapport continues his thinking.
Brunello against Enrique.
Yes. So he's managed to get his slightly unusual position. If we go back to, knight f3.
a5, we had this, right?
And he still wants his h3,
g4
position.
He tries to go for his normal
setup
h3 line.
So he's sort of going on in this standard position.
That's e5. Usually a good square for the knight.
Yes, another reason why he played a5 early. No b4 can hit it.
So there's no b4 here to dislodge the knight. Bishop e3, h5.
Stopping g4 once and for all.
Stopping g4 quite drastically.
And
quite often you have to play bishop h6 at some point and try to get rid of white's black squared bishop, which is a good piece for him. Bishop e2, b6, Well, just overprotecting the knight.
But I mean,
in many cases we would prefer to take with the b pawn rather than the c pawn, if white were to take. But usually white doesn't want to take on c5. Queen c2. And note that compared to most King's Indian positions, the knight is not on f6. That's a big difference. Bishop h6. Bishop takes, knight takes. So in general, this is a good exchange for black to get rid of this black squared bishop. Means that this knight here is secure, and I mean the bishop is no longer buried behind the pawns, and we have another outpost here on f4 potentially. White castled queenside, and now f5.
So he's gotten his traditional f5 pawn move in.
Yeah.
He has swapped off his bad dark square bishop because he's closed the center with d6 and e5 and d5 for white. So positionally, black is actually very, very happy. I am reminded of a very beautiful game played by Yasser Seirawan versus Vasily Ivanchuk, which they played a modern like this. And basically, Ivanchuk did play very early bishop h6, swapped off, played a very similar idea. And Yasser Seirawan said, I knew that he was positionally happy, but surely he gets mated if he castles kingside. And famously, Yasser Seirawan actually won the game. And there was a very interesting debate because Yasser annotated the game for the most famous magazine in world chess at the moment, New in Chess. And they said we had a very interesting post-mortem afterwards where Ivanchuk says, well, I'm obviously doing very well here for black. I've achieved f5, I've got rid of my dark squared, I am positionally just better. And Seirawan kept saying, yes, but you're getting mated, Vasily. And the game continued. But it was an interesting clash of styles and ideas that positionally black is doing very well, but white is going to point at the slightly open king if he castles kingside. Interestingly enough, of course, Andriken is not committing himself to castling kingside in this position, but I can tell viewers that this is a very interesting game to go through. But you can imagine that castling kingside and walking into g4 and other ideas can be quite dangerous, because even though the swapping of the dark squared bishop is positionally desirable for black, the idea of castling kingside and white playing queen d2 or something like this and attacking on the weak dark squares is a very, very normal idea as well. So a clash of styles here, and now we have Brunello and Andriken having the same sort of battle. What sort of top board have we missed out on? We have possibly have we done Rambaldi versus Sargsyan, perhaps, which would be on board?
Yeah, we just had a quick look at that.
And maybe we finish off.
Maybe we update that one, and then
I think before
we go to a break. So Rambaldi Sargsyan, where we had this pawn on c6. After bishop e3, he went for knight b to c4. White went b3, and allowed him to capture the bishop on e3. Eventually black has to take this pawn, so he takes it now, and now rook d3.
Okay, so
yeah, in exchange for the bishop, we've gotten the rook on the d file, and white might have some ideas of putting pressure on this pawn.
And we can say that we have, the d5 square is weak. No pawn can ever defend that, but it's not so easy for white to get at this pawn. Although he is threatening in this exact moment. Bishop takes e6, but it's very easy to defend it with, say, bishop e7 in this position if necessary.
This is actually starting to look more like a Sicilian structure.
Yes. So I think the game is still balanced because the bishop on e7 tends to protect these pawns on d6, and the exchange bishop takes e6, f takes e6. Black is not unhappy with this exchange because the pawn on e6 would then cover the d5 square.
Yeah.
And black would have an open f file, and to be honest, this looks like a favorable trade.
White will try to keep the stronghold on d5.
Yeah.
Plays knight out to d2 at some point, and maybe try to maneuver it to f1 and
we can
e3
see the players
g5.
on the screen. Rambaldi looks a very young man, to be honest. He looks quite calm and confident, as he He is not looking at the camera, saying to his mother that everything is okay. He's looking at the view over the North Atlantic Ocean. And Gabriel Sargsyan here, he sort of knows that bishop e7 is the obvious move, but he probably has some other choices as well. It's interesting that knight bc4 was played and then b3 was played. b3 I did not really expect forcing the capture on e3. It's an unusual move to play, to be honest.
Didn't really anticipate this idea.
So I think that as the players have finished their opening and they are contemplating the transition from the opening to the middle game, we should also contemplate the transition from the commentary studio to the cafe to grab our coffee for our first break.
Yes.
So we'll see everybody in just under 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Chess.com is about playing. At any moment, there are thousands of people from around the world playing on Chess.com. So whether you're a total beginner or a grandmaster, you'll find a game quickly with someone at your level. You can play at any pace, from 1-minute bullet to 5-minute blitz to 60-minute games. Or you can play more relaxed games where you have several days to make your move. There are tournaments starting every few minutes, or you can play against our customizable coaching computer. Chess.com is for learning. Chess isn't just about playing, it's about getting better. Chess.com puts the best training tools at your fingertips. Sharpen your game with over 50,000 tactics puzzles. Improve your strategy with training videos by top grandmasters. Get instant feedback after your games with real-time computer analysis. Regardless of where you're at now, you can take your game to the next level. Chess.com is for sharing. Join the community where you can discuss chess ideas in the forums and follow the latest chess news. Or join a club with friends and play in a league against other clubs. You can find all this in your browser at home and at work, or on the go with your phone or tablet. Signing up is free and easy. So what are you waiting for? Enjoy your game.
Long before man reached the remote island of Iceland, a land of ancient ice caves, sprawling glaciers and pristine water, a massive volcanic eruption occurred, creating the Ulvus Spring, a majestic underground spring deep below the Earth's surface. For 5,000 years, water has filtered slowly through layers of lava rock, creating exceptionally pure and naturally alkaline water with the perfect mineral balance. Clean, crisp, and untouched. Discover Iceland's greatest natural resource. Icelandic Glacier.
Hello, my name is Arnheiður. I live at this farm Bjarteyjarsandur here in Hvalfjörður, and I would like to welcome you to join me and my family here for wild mussel picking by the shore.
My name is Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson, and I live here at the presidential residence with my wife, Dorit. And like other Icelanders, we are going to invite you to visit our home.
I'd like to invite you to an open band rehearsal.
I would like to invite you to take a foot bath with me in a geothermal pool.
Come with me for a historical walk around the Herring Museum.
I want to invite you for a personal shopping experience.
Make some Icelandic monster soup.
Come and hunt some goose.
I'm going to have a birthday party.
Any takers?
And you're all invited.
My name is Jón Gnarr and I'm the mayor of Reykjavik. And I would like to invite you to have some Icelandic sushi with me.
Duva is our neighbor, and she usually comes when we go pick mussels. And here's one of our neighbors as well, Heiða.
Rob Lilly, Australia. Mie Prins fra Danmarku, Malgosa Mil fra Póllandi, Jara Petter fra Israel.
I've been 3 times in Iceland now, and I love the country, but I love more the people.
When I decided to run for mayor, I invented a political ideology of nonsense, you know, and pure populism, you know. I just, you know, promised whatever people wanted me to promise.
Stick around.
Hello, come with me and I will show you how to do it.
And this old town can turn around.
Perfect. It was really nice. We had guests from all over the world. The weather was good. And we had a lot of mussels, and it's delicious food. And I think everybody's happy. At least I am.
Stick around and stand your ground.
The sheep in Iceland, they have 2 layers of wool. The one that is close to them.
The highlight was when she pulled out the book that her family had made for her mom.
And then all the people, and this is all sweaters that she had made. And she made. When I'm invited into a home abroad, it's like a key to the country and the culture and the people. If you get a glimpse of what's inside, with the homes of the people, I like it.
I'll stay right here for you forever.
Welcome back to the penultimate round of the 31st edition of the Reykjavik Open. And we're going to go straight to the top boards, where we have a very interesting game between Sabino Brunello and Dimitri Andrikhen that we were discussing before. As we can see on the screen very quickly, we have this very interesting position where white has developed quickly, has done basically quite classical moves. We can see the players on the screen. Black has played this modern to be a little bit provocative. And he's managed to swap off his dark squared bishop with a h5, bishop h6 maneuver. He has also played f5 with his king still on e8. And as I said when we left it, I remembered the Surowan Ivanchuk game that was quite similar, because if black can still achieve his positional goals, then I think that this is a very interesting game. And here white, Sabino Brunello, the player on the right-hand side of our screen, played the concrete e takes f5. And the obvious idea of this is, pardon me, if knight takes or g takes f5, I would expect g4 to happen. The opening up of the center in order to try to get at the king on e8. So all of these very aggressive intentions, very concrete, taking advantage of development and trying to get at the black king while it's still in the center. So knight takes g4 looks quite good, and the positional move that we want to play would actually be pawn takes to control the central square. But even then, I believe that g4 would be played, because if the f-pawn would capture, it would allow queen g6, and this is positionally not really desirable. Black would have to try to defend. I'm not even sure what the best move is here after g takes f5, gf4. I believe that this would be the third worst move, shall we say. Maybe knight f7 or something to overprotect. But the move, the natural move for black is to take on f5 with the bishop. And the main reason why bishop takes f5 was the move played and is the best move is that you take on f5 with tempo. And normally, bishop takes a5 is not positionally desirable because white can put pieces on the e4 square. But in this exact position, the early rerouting of the knight to c5, covering the d3 and e4 squares, means that the normal bishop d3 and knight e4 maneuver and solidifying himself on these central squares is not available. Obviously, when Brunello played this as white, he knew that the odds were that Dimitri Andrikhen, or 27-32 for him, would play bishop takes f5. And the idea, which he actually played, was queen to d2, to simply attack on these dark squares that we were talking about before. This move does not allow black to castle, because then the knight would be en prise. The idea here for white as well is to attack on the weak g5 square as well. So for example, maybe I don't play g4 straight away here, but in fact probably knight to g5 would be considered a positional idea, not only to actually come into the central e6 square, but to try to play g4. So for example, if black plays a pass move here, something that's not a good move, something like a4, then knight to g5 with the idea of g4 looks very, very strong. And you can see that white could reposition his pieces on e4, the knight would go to e6. It's a very, very dangerous looking position for black, in all honesty. So I like the fact that Brunello is taking the game to his much higher rated opponent. In this position, after bishop takes f5, Dimitri Andrikhen played knight to f7. Again, I believe that's
queen
d2, sorry. Yep. I believe that knight to here allows black, knight f7 allows black to castle, since the knight will be en prise, but it also stops knight to g5. So I believe this is also a very important moment. And yeah, I like knight g5 actually, because I would have played knight to g5 myself. So knight f7 I think is the positionally correct move. The interesting thing here is the possibility of white playing for an early g4 and trying to open the position on the black king. What do you think, Ingvar?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. To play g4.
To play, I mean, g4 is the move you want to play, yeah? Because obviously any sort of exchanging would allow white to immediately take over the file. We have possibly a very old friend of Dimitri Andrikhan visiting him there. So please do not panic on our screens. Do not call for the police. We just simply have an old friend of Dimitri, thankfully giving him a little bit of a hug and a welcome. So isn't it wonderful that we have cameras to capture these things? We have Mamedarov there, with a big defense. And Mamedarov is just thinking, no, I'm going to keep constant in the position. Mamedarov has seen the funny point of it. But like all chess players, if there is a fire alarm, if their opponent gets kidnapped in front of their eyes, they do not care. They will not even stop the clock. So we can see Brunello there with his head in his hands, completely focused on the position, while Dimitri Andrikhan has been kidnapped and taken away to the right-hand side of our screen, so we can't see him. And
kidnapped. Shall we check out the other Italian, Rambaldi?
Yes. Dimitri Andrikhan seems to have escaped his pursuer and has managed to get back.
Well done indeed. So knight d4. Okay, we saw rook d3. And what's going on here? Knight d4. This is hanging. We're not seeing things.
We're not.
The idea is if takes, he wants to take on d5, takes and e4. This must be the idea.
A very interesting idea. I must admit I did not see knight d4. So bishop takes d5, e takes d5, e4. Sargsyan was very surprised with this. No, hold on. He was surprised by knight bd2, I believe.
Yes, he stopped. I mean, white played the move and he stopped.
Now let's have a look at the position after the surprising move. We believe that maybe...
Yeah, so this is probably good for black.
Yes. So this was the exchanging sequence that the Armenian Grandmaster expected. But knight bd2, he was visibly surprised on our screens. And we believe now that black might be in a little bit of trouble. Because in this position, if the bishop retreats, we will simply capture on e5. And this suddenly looks like we are in a little bit of trouble.
That's right. He looks a bit
unsettled. Did you see that? This is a moment where you can actually see that even super strong players can make large errors, and we can see the visibly disturbed, the visibly upset Sargsyan on the screens, shaking.
Yeah, with the webcams, it's quite funny because he's making reactions that he wouldn't make with his opponent at the board.
Yes.
But of course.
But look, he can see that he's basically destroyed his position, and we believe that not only has he made the error, but in fact he's almost in a lost position, because if bishop retreats, d takes e5 will be completely crushing. And this is a terrible thing to happen in the penultimate round of your tournament.
You can't even
because
go
it
back.
Ruins your tournament.
I take this one and you're in trouble.
So we believe that Sargsyan has actually made an exchanging combination we thought was good, but he's missed knight bd2, and we believe his position to be virtually lost. We believe that knight d4 was in fact
just a blunder.
A big blunder. Basically a game-losing blunder.
A finger failure, if you will?
Well, no, not a finger failure. No, not a finger failure. He decided to play knight d4 in order to alleviate his slight problems.
Yeah.
Instead of playing a slightly more, shall we say, modest move. And unfortunately, he has got himself into, I would say, a very tangible, concrete position where he has no escape.
Yeah.
And you can see the visibly agitated Sargsyan, who is trying to compose himself.
Okay, but let's hang on a minute. What happens if he tries to compose himself and play
yes.
rook e8?
Rook e8.
And then try to win the piece back with e4.
Well, the problem is, I would just take on e5 first.
Yes.
And then we still have the same position with no...
With no
tricks. Now we just have rook versus...
No, it's if I take with the pawn, it's just rook takes d5 and boom.
No,
boom,
it's unfortunate.
Okay,
so just you have to. I don't actually see what you do in this position. This is the sad bit. I don't actually know what black will play in this position.
No.
You retreat the bishop. I take on e5.
We see Yuri Garrett, the Italian, taking picture of his countrymen in his proud moment.
Yes. So I believe the best sequence of moves would be to remove the bishop to say b7. I take on e5, and now I have to. And this is by far not desirable. I cannot go back to e7 because if I go to e7, he takes d6. Is just another forcing move that will basically force my bishop to move again. So I only have one square left. Really, is g5. And then after takes on d6, I have to, well, I might take on d6 first. I have to just sit there and suffer with this position. But this is 2 pawns for nothing. This is a considered loss. I don't know, it is possible, I don't think he'll do it, but it is actually possible that Sargsyan could resign in this position. It is really 2 central pawns for nothing in a blunder. He did not misevaluate, he just did not see knight bd2.
Yeah. Just missed it.
He expected, a bit like checkers, that there would be a recapture on the central square.
He expected this when he can play e4.
Yeah.
And things must be okay.
A rather dramatic set of occurrences on one of the top boards, with the young Italian about to cause one of the upsets of the tournament, we believe, and leave him in an excellent position going into the last round. I think Sargsyan will stay here for a little while because he's trying to get some sort of composure. I did walk around looking at the top boards. I saw Gwaine Jones in his excellent suit.
Okay.
And I thought we should visit him. And then he came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder and says, "I'm sure you're looking at the Tari game," which is in fact what he considers to be the most interesting game of the round.
Okay, so are we going to Gwaine or?
I think we shall follow his advice.
And go to Tari.
And Tari, because you will appreciate what happened with one of your beloved Icelandic brothers. In the Tari game.
He had the white. Yeah, there it is.
We had this very sharp position that you were talking about.
Queen a4.
And you said, I do not believe that he will play, when you play Queen a4, Bishop d7, I thought he must have another idea in mind. And I must admit, you were
But he didn't
correct.
play Bishop d7, he played Bishop e6. So, yeah.
So this is a very, very strange idea because we thought Bishop e6 would allow perhaps b5, which is the whole point of Queen a4.
Yes.
And Bjorn did not go in for it, which is again
b5.
very interesting. So
perhaps a quick look at b5?
Yes. Well, I assume after b5, capture, we have this, what we mentioned before. The bishop has moved off c8. So therefore we have a discovered attack.
Take on d5
Oh, we
first,
take on d5
maybe.
first, yes.
And then we can think about Bishop d4, maybe.
No, but this has to be the reason, of course, because anything else I think would be quite terrible.
Yeah, but one would still get compensation even though we give up the rook. I mean, there's f7 hanging, maybe take this, but...
Okay, can we make a more modest move, perhaps?
For black?
Yes, well, I'll go back one set of squares, perhaps. No, AB. I want to use the bishop.
You want this tactic? Okay, yeah.
I want to just look at, because Bishop d4, of course, is the big move, but if I just move it off another square, Bishop c5, Bishop b6, where does the queen go?
Then I'll take on a7, a8.
Oh,
that's
okay,
a big
okay,
idea.
okay. Yeah, yes. Okay, sorry. Okay, Bishop takes d5, Bishop takes d5, Bishop b6 there.
Bishop b6 is solid.
Bishop b6. Oh, Bishop b6 covering c7.
Yeah.
I like this. Yeah, Bishop b6. Because I just want you to move the queen.
Black should be solid here.
Because then I can just move the knight, and you give me the open file. I can no immediate. Oh, actually, maybe I'd take on b5 and knight b4 if you play, depending on where you go to. Yeah. Where do you queen?
Yes,
It's a little bit tricky.
If I go to b3, then probably Knight a5 is fine.
Positionally, knight would like to play knight takes b6, but I seem to be able to winning at tempi.
Or even knight d7, of course.
Yes, well, if I'm walking into the pin.
Yeah.
So quite an interesting play.
But like you said, if you go here, then maybe
I can just capture bishop takes, knight d4, which is usually an attractive exchange. Really, exchanging pieces. I have achieved the open a file.
But still very complicated. So I'm not sure really.
But it's interesting that Bjorn Thorfinson, a very attackive player, did not go in for this line.
Knight e to c3. King f8.
King f8.
Getting out of the pin.
This is a very interesting idea. But no, I must admit, you've played bishop e6. And now you're playing king f8. Because, to be honest, you've played h5, h4. So you're not really wishing to castle kingside. You're certainly not castling queenside.
No.
So moving the king to f8 is not actually a stranger move as it looks. I like the fact that Thorfinson went in for the critical move b5. But I've got to be honest, with the king and f8, it seems to make less sense because there's no
tactics with
with knight takes e7 or queen b check. So I think that has to be a very critical reason why he played this.
Yeah, so this happened, and now bishop d4.
Which is the move I would be, okay, any bishop move I'm afraid.
At least now the rook isn't hanging, but on the other hand, there are two pieces hanging.
Okay, but now I have to move my queen.
Somewhere.
Okay, so I don't really want to walk into queen b3 into the pin. And
so
then knight f5 would be
only 12 moves played, and both
already down to 34.
Down to 35 minutes.
So this was, Gwaine is a notorious walker himself, and he stopped at this game and had a long
look. Of course, because it's unusual. The king is on f8, there are two white pieces.
There's a pawn on h4.
Two black pieces hanging, the white queen hanging. Neither side has gotten castled. It looks very unusual.
Okay, so we believe, the white queen has to move. Queen b3 does not look correct because you don't walk into pins and get hit by knight a5 or e7.
Yeah, or e7. Well, then of course this guy's hanging, so we have to do something.
But knight a4, knight a4.
I thought that
knight a5
first, knight a5 is possible, yes.
So I believe this is not desirable. So the other two, I was going to say queen c4, but then still knight a5. Oh no, sorry, then I could take on, no I can't. It's not.
It's very complicated.
Queen c4, knight a5.
We might
and now I might just be able to do c7. Something like this, because the bishop on d4 is always on. It's a very unusual position. So maybe queen c4, knight a5, queen takes e7 is possible. A very, very, very unusual position, to be honest. This, no, it's still possible. Well, I must admit, this doesn't look so bad for white. Can we just go back one move, perhaps? I've seen another ridiculous-looking idea. The interesting is, if you walk into the pin, well, okay, the knight on d5 is a slight problem. And I thought, I have to do something about my knight. But weirdly enough, I could try this.
Yeah, that's possible because we're blocking white from taking back on c6. So
and this suddenly looks quite okay for black because I'm just taking on d5. And I must admit, I'm not going to make an assessment of this position.
No, it's very complicated. So, I mean,
it's one of our more.
They're spending a lot of time on it. So
yes. We're not going to.
We're not gonna, find some secrets in a few minutes that they're spending half an hour on. So we'll come back.
We'll come back. We'll let them work it out, and we shall just be spectators. Shall we check on the Grandmaster norm chances of
Tanya,
who only needs to draw to achieve her second GM norm, and she is playing. Oh yes, the very interesting sort of reverse Taimanov.
Yeah, English.
Against Sergio Movician. So we go back, and yes, we reach this position. Bishop e6, which is what she played in Pamplona in 2011. Bishop e2, continuing on.
Then bishop f6.
Still, I believe, the same move. Bishop b4 does not ring bells. I remember that Black
played bishop d5 at some point.
It was rook c1, bishop d5, bishop b4.
Yeah, maybe that was the game.
And then we had this exchange, and white played g4, g5.
But is it transposing here? Bishop b4, bishop d5, rook c1 anyway. Bishop takes, queen takes.
And she castled.
Castles.
And in this position, white did not play g4.
Yeah,
very interesting.
In Turitsaga, he played g4 here. In the same position against Tanya. But here she deviates with, well, actually Movsesian is deviating with castles. The more solid option, seemingly. Rook a to d8.
I'm very impressed that not only Tanya remembered this game, her own analysis of this game, but somehow she's only 10 minutes behind on the clock. And I must admit, when we left this, I thought there would be a very, very large time difference, simply because Movsesian was repeating a line that she had lost to. It was obviously his home preparation. So I thought Tanya would still be, Movsesian would still be a huge time advantage, but Tanya's only 10 minutes down. So shall we continue on?
Yes, rook c4. Traditionally, white wants to play on the c file, so
yes,
getting ready to double.
Again, it looks now
maybe
very
in some
much
cases
like a reverse Sicilian.
Yeah. Queen d3. Okay, for now, white doesn't trade, but black initiates the trade.
Again, Tanya only needs to draw. So the exchange of queens, overprotecting the e-pawn, which was attacked 3 times, and now we have to play the slightly unusual rook d5. We could have played rook e8 to be fair, but maybe it lets white get a too easy game.
Bishop to c3.
Oh, maybe rook c5 would have happened actually. So rook e8, maybe rook c5. So anyhow,
yes.
Bishop c3.
Yeah, the idea here is maybe just to have the bishop defended, and so not to get hit by any if the rook moves. And there might be some ideas, not now, but in some cases to play e4. Let's say the king comes to e2, which is ideal usually, then maybe e4. Bishop is unprotected, then we can take with check and win material. So
it still looks like quite a standard position.
Prophylactic move.
G6 cannot be a bad move. Make sure there's no back ranks.
And the rook went back to c4.
And I believe this is the position with Tanya sitting there thinking, with half an hour on her clock for her remaining 20 moves. So I should say that both players have used a reasonable amount of time. I don't know, to be honest, I think black has done well. She doesn't look any really noticeable problem. She has one slight weakness on e5. Black could just play rook e8 and defend it, I guess. And the problem, of course, is the typical c-pawn that always is a target. I think Tanya is still doing okay.
Black should be fine.
I can't believe she's actually worse.
No. I would personally prefer to play the white position,
yes,
but
of course,
that's just because I'm playing aliens. And
no, you have your c file.
Black is quite solid.
Black is solid.
Yeah.
Shall we visit perhaps the other young lady who has chances for a Grandmaster norm? It's interesting that 2 of the leading contenders for a Grandmaster norm with 2 rounds to go are the 2 leading female players in the tournament.
Exactly. She has the black pieces against Ivan Shaparinov from Bulgaria.
We have to go back quite a long way.
Yeah, we actually had a look here earlier.
And we said that queen to b3 was the main move, and queen c1 we believe to be unusual.
Yeah.
Or had never been played, in fact.
After this we had some exchanges. Black perhaps needs to be careful about white getting a bind on c5 at some point, but
so
that's no longer a problem.
Okay, so this is a very important moment, because if black can play c5, release the c5 pawn, getting rid of her own weakness. And let's face it, I believe Elizabeth all wants to do is achieve equality, but c5 is the desirable move always, and she has managed to achieve it, I believe. When white played queen f4 and knight e5, we can see by the move about to appear on the screens that one idea was to play g4, g5 and have some vague attack on f7. So this must have been the big point.
g4, yeah.
And just the fact that we see the typical queen and knight combining on f7, but I guess black can just play bishop to e6, which in fact she did, covering the f7 square.
e3.
Yes, yes. No. Just holding the d4 square, because not allowing black to play d4 himself, pushing the knight away.
Knight came into c4.
An active move, and exchanging white's best piece on e5 cannot be a bad thing.
Yeah, and black is threatening to take on b2. If we defend the pawn and move it, then the knight on c3 becomes dislodged. So white takes on c4, d takes, and now g5.
Yes, I believe that. No.
Looks more like a positional move to gain space. I can't really imagine white getting a mating attack.
No, but traditionally we would like to play knight d5, but I believe there's a queen e5 problem with it. So normally we would like to play knight d5, but we believe that in this position we could play knight takes d5 or bishop takes d5 and queen e5 check. There's three. There's three.
You can add one more if you want.
I thought, I have the minor trick with queen e5, but in fact, so the obvious move to the center is not available, so that leads, I believe the obvious move then is knight h5, because there's usually when you put your knight on the edge of the board, the problem is that one day perhaps it can be trapped, it can be hit by g4, but g5 has happened. Knight d7 is kind of the only other move, so I believe knight h5 looks a little bit
I don't like it. It looks safe, but I don't like this square.
Okay, but do you like d7 though?
Yeah, not really. I'm just wondering if there are tactics on d7.
I'm a bit worried about knight d7 and throwing a piece into d5, and then winning a tempo on the guy on d7. Okay, well, play knight d7. Now I have a choice, and this is a tricky. Would you, because you want to play knight d5, but can I play bishop d5, threatening bishop takes e6, and if we capture, I get to play rook takes d5 with tempo. And then you have to protect your knight, and we have the typical I'm attacking with tempo type stuff.
Takes just loses because of queen d4 check at some point.
Oh, queen d4 check. I was going to play yes. So
okay, actually I have e5, so I was a bit quick to write black off there.
Okay, so knight d7, bishop d5. It seems as though it's still a very risky move to allow rook takes d5 with tempo, though, because at worst case scenario, I can double rooks with tempo. I'm not sure. g5 is, because it looks as though the knight should have a good square, but if knight d7 runs into bishop d5 and knight h5 goes through, you can see that Elizabeth is slightly surprised by the g4, g5 maneuver.
Yes.
Quite concrete play from the leading Bulgarian grandmaster in the tournament. And she knows that this is a very important game for her. On the top boards, needing, I believe, 1 out of 2 for a grandmaster norm. And it's one of these terrible moments where you sort of only have a couple of obvious moves, and you think, well, you know, the pessimist in you thinks always one is losing, one is okay, one is losing, one is okay. Frequently, unfortunately, both are bad. But in this position, knight d7, bishop d5 does look slightly worrisome. I don't know. Do you choose it, Ingvar? I must admit, g4, g5 I didn't think was so problematic.
It's an interesting idea to create some problems, I must say.
I must admit, it looks like though white might be slightly better after knight d7, bishop d5. This is my fear.
Yes, if you can get the d-file, at least he has some pressure.
And queen d4 check with tempo. Okay, you have e5, but it's annoying.
Yeah, knight f8 here is an interesting move. That's correct.
Oh. Well, knight f8 is reasonable. Again, when you play such a move, you want to have a follow-up of sorts, and I sort of wanted to play queen e5 check, but maybe you do play f6 with you know, no fear.
Yes.
And
perhaps on king g8 there doesn't seem to be anything.
No.
Anything particular threatened.
Okay, so
yeah,
I like knight f8 a lot. So bishop d5, knight f8, I think is. Okay, white can just double on the d file, I guess, but solves my problem, which I feared.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we have a quick look at the Arantari game, perhaps?
Yes, indeed.
That looked like the most interesting one of the round.
By far. By far. Should be, yep, up. Nope, not this one. This one. Bishop d4, and he took on a8.
Not what we were expecting.
Typical Björn.
Yes?
Yeah.
So he doesn't mind a bit of sacrificing material and having a bit of initiative, etc.?
26 minutes, he thought. Might take c7.
I'm not so sure, actually. Well, we didn't consider it. That's the obvious thing.
Okay, so what?
Obviously, black still has, well, in this exact position, black has 3 pieces on pre.
Yeah.
The knight on c7.
I would probably move the queen.
Yes, no. But once you move the queen, I can take on e6 with tempo, so I don't lose the knight. And then I have to choose between taking on d4 and c6 to get my compensation.
Let's see something, queen where.
So we just have to choose a good square for the queen.
Okay, let's try a square.
And you're still hitting the knight. So I think we have to capture.
Presumably we take.
Now we have a choice here.
And most likely we're taking this guy.
Yes. And of course, if you take on c3, you're going to try to take on b7.
I can, I forgot to switch things off. Okay, so he actually played queen b8. So
I played queen b8.
Not queen a5. So let's look at it from here. Queen b8 makes more sense now that we looked at the other one. We saw that the back rank was an issue. But now the back rank is covered. So if you play like this, then black can at least take on c3 first. And white has a rook and a bishop for the queen.
Maybe he was looking at Dmitry Andrikhen's earlier and says, well, if these 2700s can do it, why not?
Yeah, maybe he thought that this was the formula to beat the young Norwegians, to sacrifice the queen for a rook and a mana piece.
It is interesting. It's not quite as coordinated, of course, as Dmitry Andrikhen's position.
No, and the problem is black has a strong center. We can't really take here, it seems, because queen takes c3 is coming up. So, okay, this is not forced, but something we just looked at.
Okay, but I believe knight takes e6 is going to be forced.
Most likely.
And then now we have to choose here, and you would assume, I must admit, you can't. E takes d4, knight takes d4 does not look attractive.
No, I don't like the knight threat here.
So therefore, on the basis of elimination, I'm going to take on c6.
Yes. That was the,
And now here?
Intuitive idea. Is this on rook b1 or something?
I don't know, but I mean, this kind of all looks forced, and it looks as though the black position is fine. Usually when you sacrifice the queen, you have some positional compensation thrown into the bargain.
I mean, they're playing crazy, so let's try a crazy idea.
So the idea here, of course, is to somehow manage to get the pawn forward.
To keep the pawn.
It has to be promoted. It's not so much the idea of winning material. The idea is to, in fact, achieve this. Well, you know how I said knight takes c6 was obviously the forced move?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, your Icelandic compatriot did not really believe
it. Seems like the whole idea must be to keep a passed pawn here somehow.
Okay, but I'm going to play queen takes c7.
Okay.
You're going to do what?
I'm going to have a think here.
Going to have a think.
If I take here, it looks like it's hard to keep the pawn. Or is
okay. At least if I play e takes d4, there might be a trick with pawn b takes e6 d5, but it's positional compensation, and I don't really believe.
He wants to keep the pawn. It must be the idea.
You must think it's this.
So here, I can maybe flick in rook b1. We have to go to b8. Do we have enough here? Our immediate threat is e4, bishop e3, and bishop a7. But it's 3 moves. So
it's 3 moves. It's always nice when you have 3 moves.
Black can do something while we try it. Another idea is bishop a3 takes d6 perhaps. But knight f6 looks like it's in time. But still, we have great compensation now with this pawn. We can castle, and perhaps this is quite interesting.
I have
so therefore, this maybe explains why he played bishop takes c3 first.
Yes.
So this is becoming an exercise in Kotov's analysis tree. It's becoming a rather big tree.
So we've played b takes c6.
Yes.
Bishop takes c3.
So this is now what Ariantari actually played. Bishop takes c3.
Now, I want to play my obvious move now. I have a knight on pre, and I can take a bishop with check. Why won't
Okay, but we had a similar position before, and now rook b1. And if bishop... Yeah, but we only have a rook for... it looks too much. I mean, surely black is fine here. I can play bishop c7, knight d7, knight f6 to d7, and I don't see that we can promote this pawn.
I have seen the idea of your countryman. And well, fortunately or unfortunately, you were on the correct idea, but I'm not so sure how good it is.
No.
But with your Kotov tree, there's one more candidate move that you actually did suggest. Rook b1 immediately, and play it.
Immediately, okay. Now, if I take this guy...
Well, I guess I want to take on
guy.
b7, your queen goes back to b8, I can still take on c3, and we're back here again. So it doesn't lose the material that we were hoping.
We're still done. We only have a rook for the queen.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is what you said before, that you went to play bishop a3 and the knight got back in time. I must admit...
we might have.
Well,
okay, we have to get our pieces out somehow. Knight d7, king e7 are natural ideas.
Okay, but I can't play, I don't want to play e4 really. Well, I do want to play e4, bishop e3, but I kind of like my bishop holding the pawn on b7. If I play... No, because rook b6 doesn't do it. I can play d5 and block off the light-scared bishop. If I play bishop a3 first, with the idea of rook b6 and rook... Okay, rook
okay,
b6.
that's an idea.
Not that I'm a greatest believer of this, but I'm developing with tempo, and I'm running out of ideas for white. And now I wanted to play rook a6, rook a8, but you still haven't got d5. You still haven't got d5.
Maybe I had queen a7 there. No, then I take on d6. So we don't have this.
And then bishop takes d6, and I
this, and then
I can claim the then I can just play rook takes b8.
What do we take with for white?
Oh, that's a bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
I can play... No, I can't. Oh. Yeah, that's annoying if you actually achieve everything. And
you achieved everything you wanted, but you still...
Material down in a rather
done a lot of material.
Okay. Well, they're going to reach this position then.
So, we had rook b1, he took on c7, c takes b7.
Queen b8 looks forced, therefore best.
Yes.
Well, I could play bishop takes d2, check one square, but doesn't matter. You've seen the idea?
No, I had another idea, but it's not working.
Well, okay, queen b8, queen b8. Bishop takes d2 looks terrible because, well, not terrible, but I'm developing for white, so queen b8, and therefore forcing you to waste a move. Can I play bishop a3 immediately?
Hang on a minute. I have to play king e7 then. It seems.
Because I'm threatening the rather concrete bishop takes d6 check, which at least is a threat with tempo. And if you are forced to playing, and now can I play rook b6? Oh, getting there fast. My only problem is I'm not sure how much material I'm going to win back.
Yeah, at some point we have to.
We might have to count.
We have to stop counting and start counting, and it's easy to lose track when you're calculating all this beforehand.
Well, I mean, it's kind of weird, but I'm kind of still threatening to. I think you have to move the knight because then the rook on h8 will protect b8. And then I just take twice on. Can we count then? Can we make?
Yeah, let's just count here.
Okay.
Black is up a piece.
Really? Yes.
But
he has pawns.
There are a lot of pawns, but looks like we should be able to at some stage
but I'm
block
going to be
here,
honest.
or play e4. Yeah.
This is by far still the best position we found for.
For white, yeah. Unfortunately for.
But a very entertaining game.
We have this queen b8.
Queen b8 has actually happened. And bishop a3 has actually happened. Not really a shock because we don't really find anything better. The threat is bishop takes d6 check. And I kind of believe that king e7 is the only move. And I think that rook b6 is the best move in reply. Anything else would allow black to consolidate. How many pawns did we have for the piece at the end of the ending? No, I think rook b6 is the best move.
2 or 3-ish. Rook b6.
Okay, can I play a good move now with my bishop and win? I don't think I do. Bishop takes d6 is an actual threat. Well, I must admit, it's a very enjoyable game.
Yes. But perhaps, if white can't find anything, it's...
No, but here I think I have to cash in and take on d6. Don't know what else I can do. I've run out of pieces to sacrifice. So in this position...
We have 3 pawns for the piece, but...
The one on b7 maybe is not long for this one?
Most of them seem to be dropping.
Okay, but it is... Oh no, it's black's to move, so bishop d5 is probably a good move, yeah?
Yeah, it's indeed black to move here.
So bishop d5 would be the move that you'd normally play here. Get rid of the bishop, rook b8, take the pawn.
Yeah, it looks like the pawn should be dropping.
I believe we can let them suffer.
I don't believe in this for white, but well, we'll keep an eye on it. But let's
go back to the top boards, I believe.
Check the top board because we have the tournament being decided on the top boards. So we should keep an eye on those games as well. Mamdyarov, queen g5 we had earlier, queen d8. Knight a2. Okay, so he defends the pawn with this unusual knight retreat.
So we did not expect this?
No.
But knight a2 is... Well, we call this it's a slightly ugly move. Okay, h6, which you expected, and now queen c1, which is, to be fair, what we expected after h6 previously. But then it seems, why did we put the knight on a2 if we're going to play queen c1 anyway? But we shall not question the... Oh, I now see the reasoning behind knight a2, is that black actually has c5,
but we have bishop c3.
And we don't really have an obvious square for the bishop. So c5 was always a positional threat.
Knight goes back to b6.
Hitting the a4 pawn.
Yeah, hitting a4.
So white
maybe he wants to play d5 at some point, and he does it right now, okay.
d5 is always a good move in the period, so King's Indian structures.
Knight b takes d5. White wants to keep the bishop, of course, so bishop e5. Black finishes his development more or less with bishop to f5. And now c4. Looks
a very forcing move, attacking b7.
Okay, bishop f5 allows this, so b7 will be hanging here at the end, so this looks like a sacrifice from Mamdyarov, but is it a good one?
Well, his next move I think is forced. He's going to play rook to a7. The bishop will retreat, and I am going to say he's going to double on the e file. Oh, if you don't play bishop to c6.
Can you play what now?
Well, rook a e7, because I want to do stuff this way.
Yes.
I want to attack down the e file, and it's...
How do we protect this guy, actually?
And actually, it is a little bit trickier than it looks, because the bishop has no good retreat square that will not allow rook takes c1 winning. If we play queen to b2, it looks a little bit dangerous because we're walking into something. Knight d7, bishop takes g7, rook takes e1. Does not look...
Even options for rook takes e5 can be examined, but...
Oh, rook a7 has been played, and Rapport looks a little bit, not flustered, but he's sitting there with a long look because he sees that rook e7 is almost certainly the correct move. And to be fair, I don't really believe he did not have a reply to this, because rook a7, rook a e7 must be reasonably obvious to a player of Richard Rapport's immense qualities and strengths. So if we go back to here, he's thinking in this position. So bishop moves rook a e7 is the idea. Can I
Bishop must move more or less. I mean,
Yes, yes.
Rook.
D1.
We're here.
Yeah, throw in rook d1. But then we still have two bishops on pre after we move the queen. I have to find a good square for the queen, of course. If we play queen e7, hitting stuff.
This could be the idea. Bishop
and then if I take on...
And I take on b7 with queen, yeah. So, yeah.
Two pieces on pre.
And if we try this, then queen takes.
Well, then I can queen takes f6,
queen
hitting
takes
a1.
And well, yeah, this is any. So...
No, a move has been played.
Bishop to c6.
Oh, bishop to c6 actually happened. So the move you suggested is possibly the only move. And Mamedarov made his reply instantly. He played rook to e6, which does look, again, thematic. And to be honest, he's still threatening the same idea. So it's quite possible that Rapport might have missed this, that this rook e6 move, bishop moves, rook a e7 is still a move. My bishop is still on pre. Where do I go?
What about bishop d5? Is that working tactically?
Is it working tactically?
I don't want to take here. Avoid this doubling on the e file.
Oh, he played bishop g2.
Okay, so we don't have to...
He played it reasonably quickly with 23 minutes on the clock.
That.
Okay, I'm going to double on the e file.
The natural move. But now, well... Yeah, we do have rook d1.
Rook d1 maybe...
Yes, rook d1 must be the move.
Yes. Now rook d1 is... Oh, we're actually going to see this sequence of moves actually appear. And now this is... yes, I think rook d1 must be forced. One good square for our queen.
Yeah, where do we go though?
Well, we'd always would like to play Alekhine's gun, but it doesn't actually threaten anything.
Yeah.
Alekhine's gun, of course, is putting the queen behind the two rooks, but
unfortunately
doesn't actually do much.
Nothing to hit on the e file, unless we can go down to e0 and no, we can't.
Yes. I think Rapport has got out of his problems. I think we're going to take a very, very small break because of very minor technical difficulties. So we'll be back with you very shortly. We are not going to go away for coffee. We're going to be sitting here looking concentratedly and wholeheartedly at the boards. We'll be back very quickly because of technical difficulties. welcome back to the 31st edition of the Reykjavik Open. I apologize, we had very minor technical difficulties with the video feed, but not from here, actually from somewhere in deepest, darkest America, I believe, which also affected the World Championship match. We're going to go straight to the Gabriel Sargsyan game, since we left him when he was in quite a large amount of pain, as he had made this blunder when we left it quite early on. So we reached this position, and he played knight d4 with the tactical idea of bishop takes d5, and if e takes d5, then black would be fine after e4. But unlike certain other board games in chess, you do not have to capture. And white played knight bd2. And suddenly Sargsyan had realized that he had basically blundered 2 pawns for nothing. And after the logical move bishop b7, he would be forced, after d takes e5, that he cannot obviously capture because the queen is pinned. And if bishop back to e7, then d takes e5, bishop takes e5, d6. Therefore, in this position, the Armenian player was forced into bishop g5, knight takes g5, queen takes g5, 2 full pawns up for virtually no compensation. Rook fd8, rook c1. All white has to do now is exchange off pieces and get to the winning ending, and he will be in pole position for a very good score with the last round to come. Queen c7 being a rather large threat, so therefore rook d7, and white played queen c3, threatening rook g3, ending the game. F6, so holding the g7 square. We can see Sargsyan here much calmer now than before, but I believe he has accepted his fate. Shall we see what the Italian Grandmaster played? He played, after f6, he played f3, simply solidifying his pawn on e4. He can now move his knight away to the central square. And I've got to be honest, he has many choices here. He could play b4, knight b. He could play, the idea would be to play b4. He could play b4, knight b3, knight c5. That looks like it decides the game. But I mean, to be honest, it's just 2 pawns down for no compensation. So I've got to be honest.
He's just playing around.
He's many players, when they blunder, they don't want to resign immediately. They want to just sit there. They've accepted their fate, but there's still a little part of them that they do not wish to resign. It's a problem. It's not actually a problem, because it's the right not to resign. But in his own mind, he's just ruined his own tournament, and part of him just wants to accept the issue. I think we can leave them, because almost this game has ceased to be interesting from the technical point of view. We're going to go to board 2 now. And the board 2 game of Rapport
and Mamedov
versus Mamedov, which we've been told has reached an interesting stage.